There are two people standing in the wreckage of the same failure. Same rejection letter. Same collapsed business. Same failed exam, same lost race, same closed door. One of them will be stronger in a year. The other will be smaller in a decade. And the difference between them has nothing to do with the failure itself, and everything to do with a single, almost invisible choice each of them is making right now in the wreckage. One of them is asking, what does this mean about me? The other is asking, what does this teach me? That's it. That's the fork in the road. Failure as identity or failure as data. Everything else in their futures branches from that one question. Let's follow the first person for a moment because their path is the crowded one. When failure becomes identity, a quiet grammatical shift happens in the mind. I failed becomes I am a failure. Notice what that sentence does. It moves failure from something that happened to something you are. Events end, identities persist. An event can be analyzed, learned from, outgrown. But an identity gets carried into the next attempt, the next relationship, the next opportunity. And identities are self-protecting. Once you believe you are a failure, your mind begins collecting evidence to stay consistent. It highlights every stumble. It dismisses every success as a fluke. And most damaging of all, it starts steering you away from anything that could disprove it, because if you never try again, the theory stays comfortable and unchallenged. This is how one bad year becomes a small life. Not through the failure, through the filing of the failure. Now follow the second person. Same wreckage, remember. But they treat the failure the way a scientist treats an experiment that didn't work, which is to say, they treat it as information. The rejected manuscript is not a verdict on their talent. It's a data point about this draft, this publisher, this moment. The collapsed business is not proof they're not a business person. It's the most expensive, most personalized education they will ever receive, a precise report on what this market, this model, this pricing actually does under real conditions. Where the first person hears failure say, you are not enough, the second hears it say, not like that, adjust. Failure speaks the same words to everyone. The translation is up to you. And here's what should give you enormous hope. The translation is a skill, not a temperament. You are not born a first or second person. The scientists have studied this for decades, and the finding is consistent. People who believe abilities are fixed treat every failure as a diagnosis, so failure devastates them. People who believe abilities grow treat every failure as feedback, so failure instructs them. Same events, radically different lives. And the belief itself can be changed. Which means the most important thing failure ever measures is not your talent. It's your current theory of yourself. And theories can be revised. Let me give you the strongest evidence, the actual track records of the people we call successful. We remember Michael Jordan's championships. He'll tell you about the 26 times he was trusted with the game-winning shot and missed. We know the best-selling authors. We don't see the drawer of rejection letters, often dozens, sometimes hundreds, that every one of them keeps. The light bulb, the airplane, the vaccine, every startup you admire, behind each is a mountain of documented, humiliating, instructive failure. This isn't trivia. It reveals the actual formula. Extraordinary success is not the absence of failure. It is the metabolism of it. Winners fail more than losers, usually far more, because they stay in the game long enough to accumulate failures. They just refuse to let any single one become their name. So how do you actually do this, not as a poster on a wall, but as a practice on the worst day, standing in real wreckage? Let me give you the process. First, feel it. This surprises people, but it's step one for a reason. Failure hurts, and the hurt is not weakness. It's proof you attempted something that mattered. Don't rush to slap a lesson on a fresh wound. Give the disappointment its day. Grieve the version of events you wanted. What you must not do is move in and furnish the wreckage. Feel it fully, briefly, honestly, and then deliberately shift from mourning to autopsy. Second, run the autopsy without adjectives. This is the crucial discipline. Write down what happened using only facts, decisions, and outcomes, no character judgments allowed. Not "I was an idiot," that's identity talk, and identity talk teaches you nothing. Instead, "I priced too high for that market. I ignored 2 warning signs in March. I prepared for the wrong kind of questions. I'll see the difference." Every factual sentence contains a lever, something specific you can grip and move next time. "I'm an idiot" contains no levers. It's not even harsh, it's just useless. The autopsy question is never, "What's wrong with me?" It is always, "What would a smarter version of this attempt look like?" Third, extract the tuition. Every failure charges you in time, money, pride, or all 3. The cost is already paid, it's sunk. The only remaining question is whether you'll collect what the payment bought. So finish every autopsy by writing down, explicitly, "Here is what this failure taught me that I could not have learned cheaper." Name the lesson. Say it out loud. A failure whose lesson has been extracted and named transforms. It stops being a scar and becomes a tool. People who do this consistently build something priceless over the years. A private curriculum no university could sell them, tuition fully paid, custom fit to their exact blind spots. Fourth, and this is the step that separates philosophy from progress, re-enter the arena while the lesson is fresh. Data expires. The insight from a failed attempt is most powerful in your very next attempt, and it decays with every month you spend recovering on the sidelines. The rhythm you're looking for is attempt, learn, adjust, attempt again, with the shortest honest interval between rounds. Speed of iteration, it turns out, beats brilliance of iteration almost everywhere. The person who fails fast and returns fast will lap the genius who needs 3 years to feel emotionally safe again. Now, one distinction matters before we finish, because I don't want to hand you a delusion. Turning failure into data does not mean spinning every loss into a hidden win. Some experiments genuinely say, "Stop." Some doors genuinely close, and the data genuinely reads, "Not this way." Honoring real feedback is part of respecting data. The identity trap and the delusion trap are opposite cliffs on the same road. One says, "I am the failure," the other says, "There was no failure." The scientist walks between them saying, "The attempt failed. I remain." What's the next experiment? "The attempt failed. I remain." Hold on to that sentence, it might be the most important one you'll hear today. You are the constant across all your experiments. You were there before this failure, you will be there after it. You are the one entity in the lab that cannot be disproven by a result. Failures are weather moving through your life. You are the sky. So that wreckage you're standing in, or the one you've been carrying for years. Walk back to it one last time. Not to mourn, to collect. Run the autopsy. Extract the tuition. Name the lesson. And then leave the site, lesson in hand, and schedule the next attempt. Because you were never the failure. You were the researcher, and the research isn't finished. It's just finally getting good.